If you can get it.
Back on the Young Turks, I'm your host, Jane Huger, and now we have a great interview for you. Kirby Dick is the director of past movies such as Twist of Faith, and this film is not yet rated. He's an Academy Award-nominated documentary film director, in fact. And now his new movie is Outrage, which I've seen. It's about the outing of Republican hypocrites. No, actually, political hypocrites on the gay rights issue.
Exactly.
And that involves a couple of prominent Democrats as well, actually.
It does, yes.
So let me start by asking the obvious question, which is, what prompted you to make this movie?
Well, I was finishing up This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which is about the hypocrisy and actually the censorship of the MPAA rating system. And I was in D.C. promoting the film and thought to myself, there's probably a lot of stories in this town that people don't know about outside of the Beltway that would make great documentaries. And I started asking around and very quickly came upon the fact that there are many closeted politicians and that a number of those actually vote anti-gay. They vote against their own interests. And but when I found out that the mainstream media was not covering the story, I thought this is a great subject for a documentary.
That seems to be your specialty, hypocrisy. It seems like all three movies, that's the central focus. So let's talk about what people are outraged about in this movie, which is you guys are outing some politicians that were not previously outed, certainly on this level.
Exactly.
Let's name names, first of all, for the people who don't know. Who are they?
Well, we have David Dreyer, representative from California. We have Governor Charlie Crist, currently the governor of Florida, very popular governor, and has aspirations to run for the Republican nomination for presidency. Former Mayor Ed Koch, Democrat from New York, to name a few.
So people would ask, well, how do you know? And if you know and you're so positive that you put it in a movie, how come the press doesn't say it?
Well, in many cases, times the press does know. And certainly, you know, as we saw with Mark Foley, the press knew for many years and never reported on it. It wasn't until a blogger, Lane Hudson, actually started putting it up on the Internet that they actually chased the story at that point. But the way I know is, you know, I've been making this film over a number of years, and I have a team of researchers. And, you know, we did a great deal of research and, you know, just made sure that everything in the film was 100% accurate.
So I think anybody watching right now thinks, all right, look, Charlie Crist is a very prominent figure. The governor of Florida, considered for the VP slot under McCain, might run in 2012. So what are the goods on him? Why do you know for a fact that he's gay?
Well, there's a number of people we interview in our film. They're in shadow, but they two separate people, completely unrelated, talked to another person who said that he had sex with Charlie Crist. They also talked to that same person also talked about another person who had said that he had sex with Charlie Crist. And that second person, actually, there's a second source who went actually on the record and under deposition said that she was told that by that second person that he'd had sex with Charlie Crist. There's a number of other people off the record as well that have made those statements.
All right, now. There was also a great quote in the movie with the person who used to be engaged to Charlie Crist.
Yes, Kelly Heiniger. No, I'm sorry. She was a girlfriend. She wasn't engaged.
Oh, they were not engaged.
They were not engaged.
And what did she say to you guys when you reached out for comment on Charlie Crist's sexuality?
She said, call me in 10 years and I'll tell you a story. She didn't, you know, she was approached. She absolutely knew what the film was about, and she just said, you know, she felt like she shouldn't talk about it right now, but she said, call me in 10 years and I'll tell you a story. So the countdown has started as far as we're concerned.
All right, so we're gonna have a sequel in I guess 2019, yes. Outrage 2, and you know, so let's get to the issue that people say, look, you're really invading people's privacy here. They obviously don't want to come out because they're not. They haven't said it in public, given, you know, dozens of opportunities.
Right.
And is it cool to go after people, you know, and especially because it's based on their sexuality and their sexual preferences?
Sure. I mean, we don't go after private citizens. I mean, I don't believe there's any reason to out, you know, private citizens. We don't even go after politicians we know are closeted, unless they're hypocrites, unless they vote anti-gay. That was the bright line that we drew. We felt that these are people who are who are in the closet and voting anti-gay, and in the process damaging the lives of millions of gay and lesbian American citizens.
And I thought one of the most compelling parts of the movie was what happens after they get outed.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, we interviewed Representative Jim Colby, a former representative from Arizona, and he was actually, it was in 1996, the advocate was going to out him, and he decided to beat them to the punch and came in, had a press conference and basically told the world that he was gay. And he said it was like a near religious experience for him. All the weight of all these lies and deception was lifted off his shoulders. And so personally it was a very rewarding experience for him, but also politically. I mean, here's a person who had voted for the Defense of Marriage Act, which denied the rights of gays and lesbians to marry. And when in 2004, when the federal marriage amendment came up, a much more onerous bill, he actually was leading the fight against it. Because now that he's out, he has no reason to protect the closet. When people are in the closet and they're rumored to be gay, they're afraid to vote for any pro-gay rights bill, even if they want to, because they think their constituency will say, well, they're voting for it because they're gay.
So, were you concerned about the media? And what I mean by that is not the media reaction, which I want to get to as well, but naming some people in the media. It seems that you named really one person.
Exactly.
And that was Chef Smith. Are you worried about that? Do you think that's as relevant as politicians? And then number two, are you sure you got the goods on Chef Smith?
Well, let's start with number two.
Okay.
It was the editor of the Washington Blade who had an interchange with him. So, I mean, I think that that's about as credible as it gets. I mean, the editor of a very respected gay newspaper, having a direct experience with this person is, I think, extremely credible. I think any.
Did he say he hooked up with him? Or?
No, he did not have sex with him. But he was, basically what he said was he was at a bar. They were having a very friendly conversation, and it was 3 a.m. He said, "Would you like to come back to my apartment?" Mm-hmm. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, that pretty much comes pretty close to closing the deal, I would say.
Right. Okay, but they did not actually close the deal.
No.
And it's only one source.
Exactly.
Okay.
Although I've heard, I mean, there's other sort of off the record, not definitive sources, but this is not the first time this has been rumored.
Right. So, Kirby, I have to be honest with you. That was the one that I was most uncomfortable with because I thought, the others are multiple sources, etc. And then that brings us to point number one, which is, are these guys in the same ballpark as politicians? Are they also just as fair game?
Well, I think it's a good question. Does Shepard Smith rise to the level of hypocrisy? Well, here we have Fox News, which has been just leading the charge against gays and lesbians, fomenting anti-gay hysteria for 10, 15 years. There's no question about that. Shepard Smith is one of the most prominent people in Fox News. He makes $7 to $8 million a year, according to the New York Times. So, I mean, I would say he's definitely complicit. I mean, he's benefiting. In fact, he's benefiting from the anti-gay policy of this network. Because they draw readership by promoting this hysteria. So he's sitting there actually financially benefiting from this hysteria. So yes, I absolutely do think it rises to the level of hypocrisy.
That's interesting. Some would say, and we've now done a number of clips on Shep where he seems to be more of, in the Fox world and realm, more of the moderate, or some would even argue liberal voice within Fox. But you're saying he's still making money off of Fox, and that's their clear agenda. Yeah. So does that mean then that since Fox is in that direction, but CNN or MSNBC or ABC, et cetera, are not, so they're not as fair game?
Exactly. I mean, certainly, one of the things we talk about in our film is that the media and a number of television anchors are gay. I mean, this is. But if they're not, if their organization is not anti-gay, is not leading this charge of attack on gays and lesbians, then it doesn't rise to the level of hypocrisy.
So the main concern there is hypocrisy, obviously.
Exactly.
Kirby Dick is the director of Outrage. It's now out in New York, L.A., D.C., San Francisco, and Philadelphia, and it's going to spread to some other cities very soon as well. So I wanted to ask you, who's not in the movie? Are there people you thought, we got something here, but not enough to put in the movie?
There were a number of people, in fact, but I just didn't think we had adequate sourcing for me to be 100% sure, to be able to put them in the film. And in many ways, this issue of closeted politicians and many of which vote anti-gay has been treated in the blogosphere by reporting the rumors that are heard. And there's nothing wrong with reporting rumors, but that's not what my film does. I mean, my film, I was very careful to make sure that, I was 100% accurate in what I was saying.
And another interesting omission was Mark Foley. Why wasn't Mark Foley in the movie?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, initially he did have some anti-gay votes, but he was actually approached by people who said, gays, out gays on the Hill, and staffers and things like that, saying, we don't want you voting this way. And I think there might have even been a subtle threat that he would be outed if he did. He did change his voting record, and he voted, fairly pro-gay. So, again, my film is about hypocrisy. I mean, that is the central theme, is reporting on hypocrisy, and he didn't rise to that level.
I see. So it's not just do you rise to the level of do we have enough proof, but do you also rise to the level of enough hypocrisy for us to report.
Exactly.
All right. And finally, what's been the reaction? Because I would imagine that if you name people who were straight in this movie and spent several minutes outlining a case on how they're gay, that they would have just flipped out. I mean, you would have had lawsuits instantly and a counterattack, etc. Has any of that happened now that the movie's been released?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, there's been no response in that regard. Nobody's made any statement at all claiming that anything in our film is inaccurate at all. That's not from any source whatsoever. Ed Koch came out and did say he was outraged by Outrage. And of course, I appreciated the fact that he mentioned the title of my film twice in his comment. He did go on to say that he had supported gay rights in the past. He did not deny that he was gay. And it's true that he has supported gay rights, but in the past. But what he didn't do, which is what the focus of this film was, is that early in his administration, when the AIDS epidemic was exploding, he did very little to combat it. Unlike San Francisco, which put a lot of funds into combating the AIDS crisis. And the result of that, I think, because New York was the epicenter of the crisis at that time and may still be, is that, who knows, thousands, tens of thousands of lives may have been lost.
My final thought on this is that the part that I found the most convincing and compelling was what they did after they got outed. Yeah. And it wasn't just Colby. It was so many of the other lower-level Republican operatives, et cetera, that then went and joined gay rights groups. And once the weight was lifted off them, once they had been outed, they were like, oh, right, I am gay. Maybe I should vote for gay rights, instead of actively fighting against gay rights. And that, to me, was very compelling in the movie.
Right.
And the movie's called Outrage. Kirby Dick is obviously the director, and we really appreciate you coming in.
It's been great to be here.
All right. We'll be right back. Young Turks.